My name is Charlene Margot, and I am co-founder of the Parent Venture. We are delighted to have with us today Dr. Eran Magen. Take it away, Eran.
Yay. Thank you, Charlene. Thank you, Bev. Thanks, everybody, for joining. Do turn on your videos. I think it's so much nicer to see each other and realize that we're all going through this. Also, it really helps me figure out if people are either falling asleep and I need to go faster, or people are like, what is he talking about? And I should just, log off. You said, Charlene, you said before guru, and it reminded me, I was reading in a book that apparently people sometimes say guru because charlatan is too hard to spell, which I thought was hysterical. Okay, not that I'm implying anything, of course, about my... Okay, so welcome, everybody. Good to see you. So like Charlene was saying, I'm going to be talking for the next maybe 20 minutes or so. I'm going to try to keep it as short as I can so we can have a bunch of time left for us to talk as a group with each other, whether you have questions or comments or thoughts. And when this happens, we'll add more information. But we're recording this section, which is not really all that interactive, and then we'll stop once Q&A starts, and we'll say it again so everybody knows. All right, let's start. I'm going to share my screen because this is tradition in Zoom. Here we are. Good. This is working. It's working for Charlene. Okay. Sorry, I need to move everybody's faces to the side because even though I want to see you, I also want to see what I'm doing. Here we go. Okay, so first thing I want to say is I think it's great that you're here. Parenting is very challenging at times. Sometimes it feels like it's most of the time challenging. And I want you to just keep in mind that you're doing a great job. Your child is surviving, in all likelihood growing from year to year, probably talking with you sometimes, has some friends, likely will become a member of society. Like you're doing well. None of these things are obvious. And I mean, I'm kind of saying this glibly, but really parenting is not easy, and you're all doing it, and you're all taking time to learn how to do it better, which is great. So good for you. Also, I want to say parenting is hard. We don't do it perfectly 100% of the time. And the things I'll suggest here are the things that you'll do when you can. And I encourage you to experiment with these ideas that I'm serving here and see if they work for you. And they may or may not be right for you. Really, most important to remember is you're doing a good job. That's the baseline. All right. When I think about interactions between parents and kids, or really anybody and anybody, I think about the emotional intensity of the situation. So many conversations happen when nobody's particularly upset, kind of the green zone. And during that part, we're building relationships, we're building trust, we're building enjoyment of each other. Times when people are a little more upset or even quite upset is the time when we're doing supportive interactions. And the times when people are really very upset to the point of being at risk is when we do crisis. And in crisis, all the rules are different. We kind of sacrifice relationships in order to make sure everybody's safe and then build the relationships later. But in any other time, I would say in the green and the yellow, I would suggest that the main goal is to build relationships, constantly strengthen the relationships, because everything in parenting is easier when we have a good relationship with our kid. And today we're here. Today we're talking about times when our kid is upset, maybe not super upset, but pretty upset, and how do we support our child? So this is the context. And it starts like this, right? Your kid comes in through the door and kind of looks like this. Incidentally, no dogs were upset in the making of this presentation. This is Earl. That's just his resting dog face. That's just what he looks like apparently, but he's super cute and everybody likes seeing him. Not my dog, just an internet phenomenon. So it starts when your kid looks essentially like this, and you're saying, like, what do I do now? How do I help? And that's what today's about. So if you think about the amount of upset that your kid has inside as an emotional charge, right? Just how angry, how scared, how frustrated, whatever it is that your child is feeling. The main takeaway from today is coming in the coming 30 seconds. If you have 30 seconds of concentration, I would ask for it now. And then if you need to fall asleep, by all means. So here's the bottom line. When somebody's really, really upset, they can't process new information. Yeah, if you try to add stuff into their head while they're filled with this emotional charge, nothing goes in. At best, it's not success. At worst, and very likely, it becomes a fight between us and the person we're trying to support, because they don't have room for more thoughts, questions, ideas. So the goal, once you realize that your kid is upset, is to help them become less upset by releasing the charge. And once the charge is released, and they have less charge in them, then we can start working on solving and understanding and sharing stories from our childhood and things like that. Okay, that's the bottom line. When they're super upset, help them release the charge. Don't solve the problem yet. That's it. And then all the rest of the time I'm going to talk is about how to help them release the charge, right? But this is the bottom line. Okay. Let's talk about charge and about what turns pain into suffering. So annoying things happen in life, right, to everybody. And they can be aggravating, they can be maybe even upsetting, but the point where they become really, really suffering, where we start kind of beating ourselves up over them and feeling really bad, is when we have the sense that things should be different, right? Oh, the kid, I didn't win in soccer, right? But that kid should have let me score a goal. That kid shouldn't have taken the ball from me. I scored poorly on a test and I should have scored really highly, right? It's the should, it's holding this alternate reality in our mind and comparing our present reality to it and saying we should be here, but we're here. This is, as I see it, really the root of suffering. Because if we say, oh, I got a bad grade. Oh, I didn't score the goal. Like maybe I wish I did, right? But there's not the sense of like the world is wrong because I didn't get to do this thing that I wanted, right? It's a strong attachment to this particular result that is now impossible because it's in the past. That's a should, and that's why we suffer, right? Once you take away the should, there's a lot less suffering. Okay, I'm saying this very briefly. Obviously, there are. I didn't make this up. Of course, there's a lot written about this, and I'm happy to refer people to more. But this is my come from, in terms of how I think about why we hurt so much, why our kids hurt so much, because they have these big shoulds in them. Then how can we help them? And so to help someone who's really suffering because they have a big should, things should be different, or things should have been different in the past, what we need to help them is to accept what happened, or to accept what is happening. Right? How can I accept the fact that I got a poor grade, even if I'm looking to improve my grade in the future? I can't change the grade I already got, unless there's a makeup session. That's a different thing. But by and large, I can't change history. I can't change the goal I didn't score. I can't change the fact that, somebody broke my toy, right? Maybe I'm upset about the toy being broken and I want to play with it more, but it's a very different kind of pain to say, it's a very different kind of experience to say, my toy is broken. I'm really sad I can't play with it, and being super angry because, my guest shouldn't have broken my toy. All my toys should not be broken. It's a very different level of agitation. And so learning to accept the present situation, say my toy is broken, it's just how it is, and I'm sad, and that's just how it is very important. Sometimes the shoulds, this is maybe the trickiest part of what I'm going to say here, the shoulds can be about our own emotions, right? So a kid may say, I felt really shy when I came into the room, and I feel really stupid for feeling so shy because I know everybody's nice and you always tell me that I should just go and say hi to somebody, and like I shouldn't have been so shy. I should go out and be more friendly. I should be more extroverted in America. I should feel differently. I shouldn't be angry. I shouldn't be sad. I shouldn't be tired. I shouldn't, right? And these are what I think about as second order emotions. Emotions, we have an emotion, and then we have an emotion about the emotion, and often most of the pain happens, most of the suffering happens here, that second level. And learning to say, oh, I was shy, I was tired, I was upset, whatever it is, and stopping there, learning to accept that basic reality. This thing happened, takes away a lot of the suffering. So that's kind of the philosophical underpinning of what I'm going to be suggesting here. So if acceptance is the anti-should, what we want to do is help our kid accept what happened, but acceptance is hard for us to even model to our kids, because if our kid walks in and says, oh, I sat on my toy and it broke. I sat on my glasses and they broke. I got a poor grade in my test. I got a speeding ticket, for those of you with kids old enough to give you a heart attack every day. Whatever it is, it's hard even for us to accept what's happening for lots of reasons. One is, and most importantly, we love our kids. And when they hurt, we hurt. We don't want to see them hurting. And it's hard to accept the fact that they're hurting and not try to immediately change that. No, it's going to be okay. No, don't worry about it. No, I'll fix it. No, we can do it different. Also, sometimes it can make us angry when people that we love are hurting. Again, because we want our pain to go away as well as theirs, right? Why would you do that? Why didn't you just blah, 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 right? Not just because we're annoyed with them for doing something wrong, but because it led to this thing that ends up with them being upset, which is upsetting for us because we don't want them to be upset. So it's hard to accept that. Also, often, because we have more experience than our kids and believe ourselves to be wiser, and often are, their problems are often easy to solve. And it's kind of, why would you not just do the solution? And that can be crazy making. And again, pushes us to provide solutions to try to change what they're feeling really quickly, rather than show acceptance of what they're feeling. Even right now, let me take a quick pause because I realized I jumped over it. In order to help our kid self-accept, which is the goal, I think one of the goals in parenting, we need to model this kind of acceptance to them. And when our kids are coming to us upset, one way for us to model this is to accept the fact that they're upset right now and be okay with it. To say, upset happens. It's not the end of the world, right? I don't want you to be upset. I'm not looking for you to stay upset forever, but the fact that you're upset in and of itself is not dangerous, right? We can talk about upset, we can work through it, we can accept it. And that teaches the kids to accept their own emotions as well. So then we get to this, right? Why is it hard to accept our kids upset? Because when they hurt, we hurt. Because sometimes the upset seems really easy to solve and we want to just move through it. And sometimes because when they make mistakes, we pay for them, sometimes literally, right? But it's like the cost falls on us, right? So for all these reasons, it can be hard to accept how they're feeling and wanting to rush to a solution. But if we jump to a solution too quickly, they can't hear it. Their emotional charge is high. We start pumping them full of advice, ideas, and stories. They can't process, they can't hear, they don't feel supported or accepted. They get upset with us, not helping. So what can we do? There are a lot of things that help a conversation, a supportive conversation, be good. A supportive conversation is what happens when your kid looks like that dog, at least emotionally, and you kind of flip a switch and you're saying, I'm in support mode right now. This is not a regular conversation, what you have for breakfast, where shall we go, hiking, to those of us who are into it. But I know now that I'm supporting, and what do I do? So there are 3 stages, I would say, to a supportive conversation, right? You see the dog face, you go, ding, I'm going to support, and you start. Task 1, be present, right? We have to be completely present with our kid, devices aside, other thoughts aside, if possible, other conversations aside. We focus on the kid. The next thing that we'll do is focus on helping the kid release the emotional charge. And that's the majority of the conversation, the interaction. And then at the very end, we might start leading the conversation, where I would suggest that the main goal that we should have in mind is to equate power differential between us so that we can work on a solution together rather than just dictate a solution to them, which may or may not be relevant to their life. We'll talk a little bit more about that in a few minutes. So there are kind of sub skills that go with each of those. I'm not going to spend a lot of time talking about all of those things. We could later if you want. There's like whole courses on these things, but this is the basic list. Again, in terms of the setup, these are all things that you know. You just want to set aside distractions. You want to actually look at your kid and convey to them clearly that they're the center of your world right now when you're talking, right? This is not a conversation to have while you're texting, and then what happened? Oh yeah, well, so not great, right? So show them that they're the center of your world when you're talking with them. The following skills are things I'll focus on in a few minutes. So I'll add more in a minute, and similarly with the leading skills. So the queen of the following skills is the wig. Wig is it's an acronym for what I got. It's what grown-ups call paraphrasing, but it's far too long a word for me. It's really the oldest tool in the therapist's bag, I would say, and existed long before therapy existed. And the wig is nothing more, nothing less than telling your kid back what your kid said. And it's magic for a few reasons. One, well, you know what? Okay, I'll get to that in a minute. Cliffhanger. So a wig stands for what I got. It's essentially saying back whatever your kid said using your own words in a caring and accepting way. And you keep the spotlight wherever your kid left it. So when I say spotlight, I mean whatever the topic was that your kid raised, that's where you keep it. You don't start navigating away to a different place. If your kid says, I didn't make it to the soccer team today, coach is stupid, you didn't realize what an amazing soccer player I could be. That's where we keep it. We don't say, and did you make it to any other teams? We don't say, but you're doing so great in your piano recitals. We don't move it at all. We don't say, oh, I never got into soccer too, and look at me, I'm awesome. It's not about me, right? The spotlight is exactly where your kid left it. And that's because the spotlight is where the charge gets released, right? And your kid is placing the spotlight as close as comfortable to whatever is actually on your kid's mind, which may or may not be what your kid is initially telling you, right? But when you keep the spotlight there, charge starts getting released through it. And your kid may then move the spotlight closer and closer to what's actually bothering your kid. And if your kid is really lonely at school, but has a hard time talking to you about this and thought that joining the soccer team would help your kid, right? And like maybe your kid will get to it, right? But if you start moving the spotlight around, first, you're not helping the charge release. Second, you may not get to where your kid really wants to get because you're building trust even in the course of a conversation, right? And as your kid relaxes and understands that you're really there and open and caring and listening, then your kid will start talking more and more, shifting the spotlight toward the heart of the issue. So when we wig, we're not asking for more information. We're not asking really any questions. We're not adding or assuming information that the kid didn't say. We're not reassuring about the future and making ourselves liable for improvements that we can't guarantee. We're not expressing judgment. We're not giving advice. We're doing nothing but saying it back. And again, it's magic because it's so simple. It's hard to do because we want to do more, but it's such a simple thing to do. And it's so nice when somebody just says back to you what you just said. When we're upset, this is not a thing to do when people are not upset, right? It's super annoying if they're not upset. If your kid says, hey, mom, what's in the sandwich for school? And you go, so you want to know what I put in this? Like, that's not going to go well, right? But if we're upset we want to talk about what's upsetting for us. We just need somebody to signal that they want to hear, right? So as long as there's charge, wigging will just keep them going for a while. It's kind of amazing. And you're showing so many things with this simple thing, with this simple act of wigging, right? You're showing I'm paying attention. I care about this. I'm not judging. I'm trying to understand your experience, right? It's so great. It's so easy. You can just relax. You don't need to think about the solution or the cause you just relax, listen, say it back. Magic. I hope you tried at least a little bit. Here are some examples. Sandy's into it. Okay. So I explained the spotlight already. Oh, the wheel is another useful metaphor. So do you remember I was showing you the setup stage, the following stage, and the leading stage? The wheel answers whoever's touching the wheel is the person leading. And most of the time, if we're wanting our kid to release charge because we're wigging, your kid is leading, your kid is driving. Again, terrifying analogy for most of us, but your kid is driving and you can't just reach over and grab the wheel, change the topic, take the conversation elsewhere. No, they're leading. You'll lead after the kid has released most of the charge. I'll talk in a second about how to know when that has happened. Then you get to lead the conversation, ask questions, share advice, and so on. But until that point, if your kid has any charge remaining, your kid is holding the wheel of the conversation. So ideally, the way that this works is your kid comes in with high charge and he says, oh, blah, 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 soccer team couldn't, da, da, da. And your kid says the story. And so then you wig back, you say, oh, the soccer team, and you didn't make it. Your kid goes, yeah, exactly. And, the coach is just so stupid. And, nobody understands how smart I am. You're like, oh, you feel like nobody really gets all your talents. And they're like, yes, yes. And, there are really a few things that I'm really good at, like, I don't know, maybe science. You're like, oh, so science feels like a strength. They're like, yes, but nobody sees it. And they kind of relax. This is an idealized super fast version. Typically, this will take 5 to 20 minutes. Really, like this is actually the range of time that it takes. And as you wig, they'll share more and more. And every time that they say something like, yeah, or yeah, exactly. It's like you get a point. Ding, and their charge goes down by 1. So you want to be collecting as many yeah, exactlys as you can. And again, your fastest route to collecting them is wigging. And if they say, no, that's not it. Like they say, oh, soccer, and I didn't make it, and the coach didn't realize, the coach is stupid anyway. And you go, so the coach doesn't realize how good you are. And your kid is like, no, he knows full well. He just hates me because I'm, Asian, because whatever. Like your kid has like something going on that is meaningful, real or not, right? But so you didn't get a yeah exactly from the wig, but the kid kept talking, the charge kept coming out, because when you're wigging in good faith, you can't go wrong. It's very clear to your kid, you're trying to understand, right? So you said something, but it wasn't exactly right. Your kid will immediately course correct and keep going. Great. You get more information, more to talk about, more to understand. Eventually, your kid kind of sighs and stops talking, right? When you've reached this fabled green zone, and the charge kind of ran out. So you wait, you count to 5 or 6, like a little longer than a normal conversation, because maybe your kid is thinking about stuff. And then check if your kid is actually out of charge. I'll show you in a second how to check. So, but here's some examples of wigs and not wigs, okay? So maybe your kid says something like, oh, I don't know what's going on in math class. I was kind of getting it. And then a month ago, we started doing integrals, or I think it was integrals, and I have no clue what's going on. I don't know, math is stupid. All right, so here are all kinds of things you might say. You could say, I really don't blame you. I hate math. Math is stupid, which may feel very supportive, educational or not, but it's a shift of the spotlight, right? Again, you don't even know where your kid is going with this. Now you're talking about yourself and how you feel about math. You're kind of expressing agreement, which is a very light form of judgment, right? To say like, you're right in this. I hate math too. Maybe your kid doesn't hate math and now thinks he's supposed to hate math because you said that you hate, like it gets complicated fast. So you've expressed some judgment here, tricky. Maybe you say, if you talked about it with the instructor. And if your kid has high enough charge at this point, your kid will be annoyed with you. Either because it's an obvious piece of advice, or because it's impossible for reasons you don't understand, or because your kid feels immediately bad for not having done it, but is still upset and kind of looking for a target for the upset. This falls under the category of good idea later, after your kid released the charge. Yeah. So, because this is essentially advice. So it's not the first thing you say when your kid is upset. You might say, so math was making sense until you got into expanded integrals. And your kid is like, well, I wouldn't say it was making sense. I mean, I kind of hung on. Great. Your kid is still talking, right? That's a wig. That's an example of a wig. It's a question. In this case, it's in the form of a question. Basically, you're saying, am I understanding what you're saying? Right? Or you might say, well, I'm sure you can figure it out. You're really smart. At which point your kid is like, oh, okay, great. Thanks a lot. Right? Not a perfect wig. Okay, we'll do this one really quick. So your kid says, I think I took on too many commitments. Everything was fun. Now I'm president of 16 clubs and nothing is, enjoyable. So you might say, yeah, you probably did take on too much. Remember, we talked about it last year, but no. A little bit judgy, not super helpful. not showing that you're understanding the kid's experience and nothing else. Can you figure out which commitments aren't so important? Just drop them. Sage advice from the genius parent. I would say save it for later for all the same reasons as before, right? You don't start with the advice when somebody's upset. You wait till they're not upset and then discuss it. And then you might say, oh, just take a nap. You'll feel better, which is, by the way, 100% of the time true for me. However, again, if I'm actively upset, maybe it'll help me to release charge a little bit before you send me to nap, at which point I'll be very thankful that you sent me to nap. So again, this falls under the category of good idea later when they're not upset. And then a wig. Again, just saying it really simply. So it's getting to be kind of a lot now, the commitments, at which point your kid might say, well, yeah, but I mean, not just the clubs, right? I mean, I have a new sister all of a sudden, and we moved to a new city. Like, I don't know if it's just that, like, blah, 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 blah. So again, good wig, more comes out. Or they might go, yeah, it's getting to be a lot. I just didn't think being president of 17 clubs would be so hard. And then you wig, right? More. You're like, oh, you thought it would be work, but not this much work, right? As opposed to saying, oh, really? You didn't think it would be any, right? We're just wigging. We're just saying it back, and they'll keep on talking as long as they're charged. So ideally, we get, we cross this arbitrary blue line of calm or relative calm. They say, yeah, that's right, at the end of our wig, and they kind of look at us, and we look at them, and they look at us. And then we check if they're done with their charge by summarizing. So when we summarize, we tell the whole story in a couple of sentences. So we might say something like, okay, so you're saying that you've been feeling kind of isolated at this new school, and you thought that making it into the soccer team would help you meet people, and you're really disappointed you didn't make it in. Plus, it's clear to you that you're actually a better player than most people who made it in, right? So you're suspecting, like your sense is that this is some sort of either a personal thing or kind of discrimination against you, right? Is that what you're saying? At which point, your kid might say, yeah, and that's really not okay, because charge goes back up. You know what to do, right? You just wig until charge goes back down, and then you'll summarize again with this new thing. Now, if this happens, I would say congratulations, you've reached level 2. Usually there's a peeling of a layer here, and something deeper will come out at this point, right? So they might say, yeah, and I don't think anybody just likes me unless I'm a superstar. Like something important can come out, right, out of this. So if you summarize and it goes back up, great, meaningful conversation, good time to connect. Or your kid will say, yeah, that's about right. And they're done. The charge is out. Again, congratulations. By far the most important part where you help your kid the most, and the part where you build a relationship the most with your kid, is this part, the following part. The part we all love the most is the part where we lead and we start giving advice. It feels best. It feels like we're doing something, right? This is the part that is most helpful for your kid and for your relationship with the kid. Spend as much time as you can on this part, I would suggest. But eventually we summarize and they feel fine, at which point we can get into our favorite part, leading. And I would suggest, I mentioned this before briefly, that the goal here is to work on equating power with their kid. We inherently have a lot more power than our kids, right? Just because that's life. And a lot of what being a kid is about seeking to have more power and more autonomy in our lives. When we have a problem and we share it with somebody else, even if it's our peer, right, this already builds a power differential. We've made ourselves vulnerable to them. They know more about us. Maybe they're judging, maybe not. And so we have this parent-child disparity in power, and then we have this vulnerability making by having them share more and more about what's on their mind. And if we just sort of hand down advice, kind of cram it down their throat, it can either lead to a rupture in the relationship, or it can lead to disengagement. Like they might say, sure, yeah, okay, yeah, good idea, Dad, and then just kind of walk away and not do it, right? Or they might say, that's the worst idea I ever heard. Why would I, right? And then it becomes this kind of a clash. We don't want that. We want to be on the same side, right? It's us against the problem. So to do this, equating power helps a lot. So here, a couple of simple moves to equate power. One, ask for permission before you start leading. Right? Can I take the wheel? It's a really simple thing. You just say, hey, so remember, you just summarized, right? Your kid is like, this is amazing. My parent like understands everything I told him or her. Listen, this is great. And then you say something like, do you want to hear what I think? Or you might say, can I suggest something? Or you might say, this reminds me of something that happened to me once. Do you want to hear? Whatever it is, right? Ask for permission. Takes a couple of seconds. Once they say yes, they're committed. And you can, in good faith, continue. And if they say no, then don't, right? Your extremely self-aware child might say, when you say, can I tell you what I think? Your child might say, actually, this was really helpful. I want to think about this for a bit. Okay. Just on my own. Amazing. Like, how wonderful, right? And you respond with grace and elegance. You say, great. I'm so glad we talked. I'm really glad you shared this with me. And if you want to talk more, I'll be here scrolling through Facebook or whatever you do. So thank you, Sandy. It's so encouraging to see. I really appreciate it. Alicia's happy now too. Good. Okay. So ask for permission and do what they say. Secondly, it's not really written in order, but I would say own your ignorance, right? Your kid told you for the past 10 minutes about something that they've been living for the past year, month, day, whatever, right? You know less about it than they do. There are details that you're missing. It's actually pretty important because you might say, oh, can I make a suggestion? And they go, sure. And you might say, how about talking with the teacher? At which point your kid might go, teacher, are you kidding me? The teacher hates all the girls in the class or whatever, right? Whereas if you say something like, look, I know that, I've only heard some of what's going on. I'm sure there's like a much bigger story behind it. But from what you told me, it sounds like it may be a good idea to just tell the teacher that this thing is going on, at which point your kid might, on a good day, say, no, there's a piece you're missing, right? Because you open the door to that. And it's no longer a confrontation. Again, it's no longer like your solution against your kids. It's you saying, tell me if I'm missing anything. From what you said, from what I understand, it sounds like, and your kid can say, oh, here's a detail you're missing. Great. Now you learn more. Excellent. And then lastly, along the same lines, ask them to disagree. From what you told me, and I realize that there's like a lot more going on here than I understand. So tell me if I'm missing something that's important here. But I think it might be good to just talk to the teacher about it in private, right? Just one day after class and say, this is something a lot of us are struggling with. What do you think? Do you think that could work? Do you think that's a good idea, a bad idea? Like, have them evaluate the idea with you. Again, invite this at the end, right? So these are tips. And somewhere in between, obviously, essentially after asking permission and owning your ignorance, you give your advice, you share your story, you unleash your wisdom on them, basically. So these are the steps. That's what we covered today. Oh, that's an abrupt ending. Sorry, I feel like I should have made a softer transition here, but that's the basic idea. So quick summary. I'll add a summary slide for next time, but quick summary. When your kid seems upset, or you think your kid might be upset, ask what's going on. And then flip the switch and go into support mode. Support mode means you're listening, you're taking in, you're helping them release charge by just wigging, nothing else. You just say back what they said, and you're trying to collect as many yeah exactlys as you can until a final yeah exactly where they say, yeah, you got it. And then they say nothing for 5 or 6 beats, at which point you check if you got it by summarizing. And if they say yeah again, you can offer your ideas, thoughts, suggestions, and so on. But the main goal is to help them release their charge. This is also an enormous relationship builder between the two of you. You're suddenly a very safe person for your kid to talk with. Okay, so that's the non-slide summary. With respect to the current slide, Parenting for Humans is the website that I put up in the organization that I created to talk about things like this. And Charlene and Bev are awesome about letting me come here and talk to you about these same things, because I really believe that if we can get more kids to have better relationships with more parents, a lot of the world's problems would go away. And I love the whole topic, as you may have surmised by now. If you'd like to join the mailing list, that would be wonderful. I think mailing lists are things that probably went the way of the dodo, but nobody told me. I heard about social media. But at this point, it's a mailing list. And so if you'd like to join, you're very welcome to. Sometimes blog posts with thoughts and ideas, notices about future workshops that are going to happen about a variety of topics in parenting, and then a parenting group, meetings that you can join if you want to just sit and think a little bit about parenting with another parent, right? Just have time to strategize, think what's going well, what do I want to change, and just think about it rather than just improvise our way as parenting rushes us by.